that I'm also happy that our panelists are here, which I will introduce. Well, they'll actually introduce themselves. And I just want to mention a few things for you, attendees. Um, One, there is a Q&A that you can ask questions, and I and the panelists will try to get we'll try to complete as much. We'll try to get to those. We'll try to answer those as much as we can. And then there's a GLAM poll where you could ask, and I see some already doing the poll in terms of what questions you are interested in having asked. I'll I'll try to get to as much of these as we can. All right. So I'd like our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. So happy you're here. So,
All right, I think I'm going first because we
all
said
right.
Nathan said alphabetical, so I will kick us off. So,
Okay, we can do that.
good afternoon from Chicago. So, I'm Abigail Gobin. I have multiple titles. I am a professor, I'm a full professor, I am the data management librarian, and I am the data policy advisor. So, I am at the University of Illinois, Chicago. My academic home is in the University Library. That's where I got tenure. And my administrative home is in the Office of Research. So I'm divided between the two. Basically, if it's research data management related, it's going to cross my desk one way or another. Very short where I come from and where things are with me. I started in medical publishing. I worked for WebMD in New York. That's where I did my undergrad and graduate work. I then did public librarianship. I was a children's librarian at Chicago Public Library and up in Wisconsin for a couple of years. And then I continued doing freelance medical work and then transitioned that into being a medical and then data librarian. So I've been at UIC about 15 years now. I'm also currently the vice president of RDAP. So if you have questions about getting involved with professional organizations, happy to answer those. And so excited to hear your questions, and I'll turn it over to Liesel.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Liesel Cottrell. I am not nearly as impressive as Abigail. So my undergraduate degree was in psychology and English, which meant I had no idea what I was going to do with my life at that point because you are young. So I decided to go into library field because the only really super happy person in my family was a librarian. So I went to UIUC, the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, got my master's there, and became a public librarian because that was the only job I could get right out of library school. And it was fantastic. It was the most amazing learning experience. But it was part-time. So sometimes you just got to get what you can get. And eventually, though, I found a full-time job at Resurrection University, which was a nursing school. So that one fun class I took in library school was very instrumental to me getting that position, which was a health science library course. I didn't think that would help. I thought it was more fun, but I was at Resurrection for 10 years. I built a paraprofessional and a professional library team as the university grew. I was there for almost 10 years and then decided to spread my wings a little bit more and became the library director here at Concordia University, Chicago. No, we are not in Chicago. We just say that we are. So again, not as cool as Abigail. That's okay though. But otherwise, I've really enjoyed being in the library field. Just recently, instructional design was moved under the library area as well. And they are really in charge of teaching the professors how to become better teachers and improving the course designs in online and in-person learning. And that's me in a nutshell.
Right. Glad you're here.
Well, thank you, Liesel, and thank you, Abigail. Also, thanks to DH for being the first person to ever call me a distinguished panelist. That's a new one here. So I'm Matthew Goldberg. I am the Access User Services librarian at the University of Louisville. I've been on tenure track now for 2 years, so I'm kind of halfway through my professional process in that way. I've been in libraries though for about 15 years. I have a BA and an MA in history. That's actually how I came into libraries in a very strange and tortured way. It's also why I serve as both the Access Services librarian and the history department subject specialist, liaison, and general history know-it-all, I guess. I also teach full-term courses for the department. So like Abigail, I wear a lot of different hats. I think it's kind of a common process for many of us librarians, and something I'm sure we'll talk about more. My career journey started a long time ago, first as a student assistant in libraries, then as a night staff member, then in media resources, which is a department that no longer exists because trying to explain to 18-year-olds now what a DVD is has changed a lot, and so it is no longer part of my purview. But what has really remained the same is access is very central to my work. I really enjoy circulation services. That's how I've ended up in both the academic side of things and in very much the patron services side of things, which at the academic level is a little bit more research focused. And this is kind of how my career is developed, is an interesting intersection between history, libraries, research, access, lots of hats, lots of different positions. And I got my MLS about 6 years ago now, which is why a few years ago I started on the tenure track in the faculty process, where I'm an assistant professor as well.
Right.
Take it
Thank
over,
you.
Nathaniel.
Good morning, Henderson, Nevada. I'm Nathaniel King. I'm the dean of the library here. Henderson is about 10 miles from the Las Vegas Strip, just to give you a sense of where I am. I'm in southern Nevada. Uh, also have an undergraduate degree in history, and wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I was perhaps pursuing a PhD track in history, but decided that the job market looked a little rough. So I ended up working in an archival collection in North Carolina and just got really interested in the work and really enjoyed working with very smart people. And so I ended up going to library school at UNC Chapel Hill. Um, Following graduation, I was geographically restricted in where I could apply. So I was looking at positions in the immediate Raleigh-Durham area and was fortunate enough to find one a little outside the triangle, but in the Triad, which is the Greensboro area, Greensboro, Winston-Salem area. So I was an information and literacy librarian at Guilford College, which is a small liberal arts college. And I was there about a year. And then I made the move back to UNC Chapel Hill as a social sciences librarian. And I was there for about 3 years. And then the opportunity popped up for me to move out here to Nevada. This position was initially a director position, and it was an opportunity to open a new library, growing campus. At the time, this institution was one of the fastest growing institutions in the country in terms of enrollment. So a lot of interesting things. The institution had only been founded in 2002 as well. And so just a lot of things that were very different than the environments that I had worked in, which was very appealing to me. And then in 2022, I was elevated into the dean position. I'm also, like Abigail, a full professor here. So these are tenure track appointments. And yeah, I love living out here. It's great.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. And indeed, you are all distinguished panelists. And with that, we're going to go to the question poll, and then I'll switch over to the Q&A for you. All right. So let's take a look at this here. I'll scroll down. Let's see. Okay, I'll ask the one where the attendees probably a good number are asking. Um, how how would you what are your recommendations? And you all don't have to answer. It could be one or two. So, or if you all don't want to answer, that's okay. I can move on to the next question. But um, how would you get ready for interviews, job talks, and um, visiting campus for an academic library position? Any tips for that? Yes, yes, please go ahead.
I think it really depends on what makes you unique and why do you
Mhm.
want to be in the academic field. Obviously, don't approach the position just saying, oh, I want a job. You really should look at the mission statement of the university to see if it's something that first that you agree
Mhm.
with. But then the next is to take a look really at the library team and the programs that the university is supporting. And is it something that you're interested in? Do you have a background, maybe a family background that might be make you a unique candidate? Especially because you're going to be competing against many, many other people. So you really have to think about some of the unique experiences you've had personally and probably professionally.
Thank you. Great advice. And
I'd just build on that
oh
a little
yes,
bit.
please go
Yeah,
on. Yes, please.
just absolutely, 100%. But also, why here? Why do you want to work with us? Um, the You can tell it is very obvious when someone has looked at us, right? They've looked at our website, they've looked up somebody's name, they have looked to see what we've written, anything like that. And they ask a question about that, right? Something that says like these are people you are going to potentially be spending a lot of time with. So look and see like are these people you'd actually like to spend time with and ask a question about wanting to spend time with us. One other thing I will recommend is write down 2 or 3 questions that you can ask all day, right? Um, it could be something about like, how do you grow professionally? Or what's an article that you read recently that you enjoyed? Or something like that. They seem like icebreaker types of questions, but you'll get different answers over the course of the day, or like, what's something you're excited about on campus and see how people react. It will give you an idea of the workplace and the vibes, but it also demonstrates, again, interest in working here with us.
Thank you. Good. Keeping a few questions ready. Um, all right. I'm going to switch from the poll to the questions in the Q&A. Do academic library positions typically require dual masters like MLIS or MLS plus another specific field?
And I can jump in on that one. I'll say that the general answer is no, is the terminal degree in the field is the MLS or the MLIS. But there isn't, I won't say there's a downside to having a second master's degree, particularly if you want to work as a subject specialist or you want to work in a part of the field that's specific to your second degree. And it's not that the BA or a BS or any of the other degrees wouldn't necessarily fit that. At my university, for instance, there is, the MLS, the MLIS is the baseline for tenure track process. But beyond that, it's really useful to have that second degree, particularly if you're working in one of the various fields that academic librarians cover. My MA in history tends to work really well with the work I do as the liaison to the department, but it isn't a requirement.
Thank you. It reminds me of people who think that if you're going to law librarianship, you need a, JD, but that's not always the case. So thank you. And next question for the panelists. What does tenure track look like as a librarian at your institution?
I hate to go twice, but since I'm,
Oh,
I'm midway through, I don't mind jumping in a wee bit.
oh,
The
oh,
first the
please
first
go
word I
ahead.
want to say is terrifying. It's like the world's biggest homework assignment, where you have 5 years basically of a process to make sure that you don't, at the end of the day, get the boot, to put it politely. But basically, the process is here and in lots of other places is you have 4 years where you're on track. You get performance evaluations every year based on your big three things, your criteria, which is A, your actual job, B, which is your faculty work as professional researcher, writer, and presenter, and then C for us, which is service work, which is sitting on committees, working in various parts of the field, basically getting yourself out there, putting yourself into professional organizations. Generally, almost every university, all libraries academically that have this process, a tenure process, are dominated by the professional book, the faculty book that tells you how many publications you need, how much service you need, how many presentations you need. And it doesn't matter how specific those things are, it still feels a bit terrifyingly opaque. And you just kind of do as much as you possibly can until the clock runs out. And then you pray to the tenure gods, is the best way I can put it.
It's good. Praying is good. Yeah, which I don't know. Maybe everyone know. Maybe the attendees know this, but not all academic librarians are on a tenure track. Depends. Okay? Yeah, it depends, doesn't it? Or actually, the University of Oklahoma used to be, and then they changed. So the librarians that are currently or recently hired are not on tenure track. So, all right. Thank you. Thank
Can I
you.
just add one thing?
Of course.
Oh, perfect. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're on a tenure track here. If I were a candidate for a position, these are the kinds of questions that I think I would be asking. So, what are the expectations as far as the breakdown for the responsibilities for this position? So, as mentioned by Matthew, a lot of institutions have three criteria. So it's typically something like librarianship, scholarship, and service. There's a lot of community colleges, though, that don't have that scholarship piece. So it would just be librarianship and service. What does that breakdown look like? At a more research intensive type institution that takes this process more seriously, you might see only like 40%, for example, for librarianship. And then the remainder sort of divided amongst the other things. So that's something to think about in terms of, do you want to be sitting in your office or collaborating with people like several days per week on scholarship? For some people, that sounds perfect. For other people, that sounds like maybe not the best fit. Um, the other thing that I think is not uh, very frequently discussed, I feel like in these kinds of situations, is one of the big advantages of a tenure track position, other than the job stability, is the promotion bump. So here, for example, the promotion bump ends up being in the ballpark of like 11 or $12,000, which is a really big increase in salary. Something that would be very difficult to get in a non-tenure track appointment. I think there's also a lot of other advantages in terms of well, depending on your perspective, but there can be some real big advantages to faculty status in terms of being able to access other resources on campus, being treated differently by faculty that you're trying to serve. But again, I think that depends on the institution that you're at.
Indeed. Indeed. Thank you. Thank you. And we have another question for Nathaniel King. Uh, what's opening a new library like? How did you prepare, and who did you lean on for advice?
Yeah, good question. So, I think we were really interested in trying to think about a new type of model for the academic library. We opened in 2015, and so as I mentioned earlier, we were already in a very different position than a lot of libraries in that the institution was only founded in 2002. So we'd kind of skipped that print accumulation period of the 20th century that so many libraries are kind of dealing with as far as decreasing use of print resources. What do you do with the space once those materials are deaccessioned? And so we were really trying to think about how do we best serve the students that we have here, which at the time was a largely commuter campus. And so we actually made the decision to not have a physical collection in the space, which was the first academic library in the state that had made that decision. And we were really focused around listening to students. We did a lot of surveys of students, some focus groups of students, looking around at other libraries that had recently completed large renovations and trying to think about how best to meet the needs of our students right now, but also into the future as well. And so we wanted to try to have as much space available to students as possible in the most flexible configuration as possible. And I think that's worked out pretty well. One of the sort of back to the future moments that's happening here right now, though, is we're actually adding in a print collection to the space. So we're going to be adding in a leisure reading collection,
Uh,
um, just based on feedback over time, and then some other space changes that have happened in the space.
Thank you. You must have a large kind of collaborative area, study areas, right, in your library. All right. Thank you. And here's someone from Chicago. Okay, here's the question. As a library science student, what resources do you recommend for networking, volunteering, and or getting experience in the field, especially in Chicago for the student? But I imagine it could be applicable to anyone. So
In terms of networking, your professional organizations are going to probably be your best bet as places to get started, trying to find people that you want to work with or want to engage with, that kind of stuff, right? ACRL has an
mhm.
amazing amount of stuff. Um, Core does some, not as much as we used to when it was Lita. Art Up, certainly, we've got our if you're interested in research data management, our conference is going to be in a couple months. It's going to be online. Most of the networking stuff has had to move online, right? That is where stuff is, and we don't see as much in person as we did 5, 6 years ago. That is the nature of the thing. But that means you also have different kinds of access and things like that. In terms of volunteering, that's going to vary by organization. I have usually with like we've seen students do practicums. Practicums are really, we do a lot of practicum stuff. So those tend to be an opportunity. I have also worked with students who are interested in getting involved in research. Um, Depending on what it is, I have taken on students who want to do a research project that a lot of times has to do with my capacity more than anything else. But there's a lot of librarians around in Chicago. Someplace like the Newberry or CPL are going to have different rules about volunteering and participating there. But most of us do some level of practicum or something through through your school, and your school should be able to help make some of those connections.
Thank you. I had an opportunity uh, once, hope to do it again, but to attend the American Library Association conference in Chicago. And I'm wondering, do can students in the area, library students, volunteer and get a reduced or free admission to the ALA conference? Would
I
you happen
don't
to know?
believe there's a I don't think I've
Okay.
never seen anything from the volunteer perspective. There's certainly
Mm.
a discounted student rate. And
Hmm.
if nothing else, you can get like a day pass, or there will be scholarships or stuff for day passes into the convention hall.
Hmm.
Um, the convention hall and like just being overwhelmed by the vendors is highly
Huge.
entertaining. We will be in Chicago this summer. Your first time through it is terrifying. You're like, so many booths, so many people. You get better at it over time. My first year sucked. But you get better at it over
It's
time. But
huge.
I have not seen, it's not something where, because ALA relies on staff because of what they have to get
Hmm.
done. No, I've not seen it done as a volunteering, that kind of
Okay. Well,
I,
thank you.
I'd love to throw
Yes,
out as well, because I think Abigail's
please.
answer is fantastic. But I'd add, one of the biggest and best places to network and is often forgotten is at the state level.
Hmm.
All of us, are belong to or partially belong to state level librarian organizations, and it's such a good place to get your foot in the door, meeting people, who are your not just your colleagues, but also
Hmm.
fundamentally people that you are your neighbors as well as librarians. And I've done ALA. It is, as Abigail said, terrifyingly large the first time. But I will say that there is no better place, not just to like network, but also to start your professional presentation career, start your meeting people at the local level, sit on committees, get to know your neighbors. And there's no safer place to start or do your first presentation than with a bunch of librarians that you know their first name, and that you've met before.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I remember going and there was a bus, like a full-size bus in the conference center. And you walk in and there's more displays in the bus. There's books. It's amazing.
And
Uh,
you can fit the entirety of Kentucky Library Association in like one of the rooms for ALA. So that'll tell you how much smaller we're talking here.
yeah, it's huge.
I
Yeah.
would also recommend, because your university that you're getting your library degree is probably part of a consortium. And some consortiums may have limits of how much they can support students. But I find networking with our smaller consortium and our bigger one. So in Illinois, most academic places belong to Carly. And then we have our smaller private schools
Hmm.
that have the Russ consortium as well. And we really know each other and we really support each other. We bounce ideas off each other all the time. And then you have some of the state organizations too, to. Uh, Illinois is very pro-library. Not every state has something like the Illinois State Library or Rails, but those organizations can absolutely help you too.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely the local associations. And I had a chance to go to the Nevada Library Association, of course, Utah. That's where I'm originally from, but yeah, and of course Oklahoma's uh, library conference, and they're just great for networking. In Oklahoma, if you're a student volunteer, you can get in free, actually, here. So that's a perk here. Okay, do you have any suggestions for keeping your confidence up while searching for a job? I have my library science degree, and I have no doubts as to my passion for books, but after enough rejections, you start to feel that something must be wrong with you. Any advice?
It's
I can take
hard.
a crack. Oh, it's good.
Yeah, Nate,
Please.
go ahead. Yeah.
No
I'll
worries.
let you tackle this one. No.
So I would say that, most people, the wisdom that they should listen to is you're either compromising on positions or you're compromising on location. And I think that, that has been the case the whole time I've been in libraries. So for example, like let's use the Chicago example. You live in Chicago and you want an instruction librarian position. Well, that's probably going to be a lot more challenging than being open to other types of positions in Chicago or being willing to move away from Chicago for an instruction position. It's just kind of the reality of it. I also think that a lot of people take a long time to find their first position out of a master's in library science program. Um, so you just got to kind of keep at it. Another piece of advice I would give is I think there's sometimes a temptation to just sort of fire things out. And I think the more time you spend on customizing things, learning, as was mentioned earlier, learning about the institution that you're applying for, I think you're going to increase your chances there. But also be realistic. If the position's asking for 3 years of experience and you have one, it's probably not really worthwhile spending your time on that application. So just be judicious as opposed to just feeling like you need to apply for everything. I know it. I've been in that position where that feels like the way to go, but I think ultimately, um, yeah, being targeted is probably a better use of your time.
Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, and I've heard somewhere that, if you get a rejection or it's actually at one time, one search panel, and there could be all sorts of variables happening at the time, right? In at the place. There could be politics going on. You never know. And so anyway, um, well, thank you. Let's move on. And let's see what's right here.
While
How
you're,
did you,
DH, while you're looking for that, there's just one question I wanted to build on that kind of ties into this. Somebody
okay.
asked if, I don't have my MLS yet. Can I start applying? I'm at a public institution. I cannot consider your application until you are holding the degree.
Well,
If you are at
thank
a
you.
public institution, state institution, Liesel, you can consider. Yeah. So do take a look at public state institutions. If it says required, it is required, and I am bound by law to hold you to that. I cannot even look at your application until then. If you're not sure, check with the HR department. Please reach out to them and double check because save yourself time, save everybody time. But yeah, Liesel can. Private institutions have a lot more flexibility.
Oh yeah, we have no law. No, I'm kidding. I know this is being recorded. No, we definitely would be open to someone who is still pursuing their MLIS, especially if you have a lot. It depends on the position that's open. If it's an instruction position and you have 15 years of customer service experience, it's gonna be, you're gonna be really high up there, at least for that first interview.
Mhm. Well, thank you. I didn't see that question first, so thank you for noticing it. I couldn't find it anywhere, but I do know I've had students they were in the program, they got public library positions and also school library positions too, as well. So, but with the caveat they must complete their degree. Yeah. So, okay, how did you know this was your pathway? Was it one moment over coffee and breakfast you thought, I'm going to work in academic libraries? Or was it something else?
Well,
I
I
think
was a
Matt
student.
and yeah,
Go
Matt and
ahead.
Nate
Go
were
ahead.
on different tracks. You guys were on different ones.
I was going to say I was not. It was not my original plan. And I'll say this with a lot of love and honesty to libraries and librarianship because I truly love it. But when I was getting my master's in history, I was very sure I wanted to be a history professor. Then I finished up my master's in history, took one look at the job market, laughed, and realized it was time to figure out a different process. And I happened to be at the time working as a staff member in libraries and thought, why would you leave something you're really happy in for something that may not exist in 6 or 7 years? And the long and short of it is, I'm very happy with that decision, but it wasn't my first process. Ironically, now I teach in the history department as a professor, so I backed into that part of the job anyways. But
Right.
I wouldn't trade libraries for anything, but it wasn't my initial idea out of my undergrad degree.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing your pathway. Yeah. I think I think that may happen to many people. It happened to me too. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I'm a rarity in that I went directly from undergrad to grad school in libraries. Like that's more common now, but in my cohort, almost
yeah.
no
Yeah.
one had done that.
And yeah, actually for me, I actually was my background was rehabilitation counseling, and now I'm here. But I can use it, of course, in terms of accessibility for people with disabilities, right? So, yeah. All right. Okay, next question. What other professions intersect with an academic library position, would you say?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay. I think I I first thought was, well, there's other, I know people, people can move from a public library to academic, from academic to public. And I know if you say you work for an organization, you're the records manager, maybe perhaps you could
Yeah.
move over if that's what the question is
I
asking.
if they're yeah, if they're looking for like where do you go from here? A lot of research, a lot of people who are in data management and research data work have shifted to either to or from industry.
Hmm.
Data management is critical across a variety of things. So we see a lot of that in my subdiscipline specifically. Similarly to most, I would say, in terms of like an instruction position or something like that, where you might see it would be in an educational type role in a corporate setting, right? You're doing trainings, you're doing tutorial development, you're doing information management in some way. So KM, knowledge management work, records keeping,
Hmm.
as DH said, some of those kinds of roles. There's also a lot of library vendors, right? Colleagues who've worked for like EBSCO. I
Yes,
have a good friend who's up at Ithaca, which runs JSTOR. I think we forget that those are other adjacent colleagues and partners, and a lot of times people with MLSs go into those roles.
indeed. Yes, yes. Thanks for bringing up the vendors. Yes, they're there. And sometimes they go from academic to being a vendor.
You're
Very cool.
absolutely right. Also, the kind of user experience roles, I'm thinking, corporate wise,
Hmm.
librarians absolutely can transition into that. I think also the reason why I have instructional design under the library here at Concordia is because it's more of a teaching, and training position.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, user design. Yeah. Next question. Uh, I currently work in a public library, and this touches upon what we just talked about a little while ago. What resources would I need to switch to academic? Do you- Um, I would say have experience myself, but you panelists, please
I
have
don't
some
know if
kind of
I'd say
experience.
resources, but I would say, do your best to lead programs that you're running. Because if you're putting yourself in more of an instructional position as opposed to, bringing some outside person, I think academic libraries would pay attention to your application a bit
Hmm.
more.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Or even if you're able to network with more, academic librarians, attend their gatherings, or even if you can, if you had time, you might if they have volunteer positions, you might do that to see what it's really like. But
Some of it
uh,
is just, honestly, a lot of it's translation, right? If you're doing story time, you can handle, an intro level classroom. You need to be able to, if you've done collection, I was a children's librarian, right? I do a mean story time. They're just taller. It's still story time. They're just taller. You've done collection development. Speak
mhm.
to that in both of these roles, right? You've weeded, you have purchased items, you have done budget management. What are the skill sets that you are translating to? And that's where a good cover letter is going to be really critical. Um, a good cover letter can absolutely help make that bridge for you. And that lead them along.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you. Um, it's an interesting question. How easy is it for someone who has a bachelor's degree from abroad and came to pursue graduate studies in the U.S. to get an academic library job? To get an academic library job, I assume this person is a graduate student in library and information science. I'm assuming, but anyway, panelists, what do you think? I can't think it would be a major barrier or barrier at all. What do you think? Maybe I'm just not understanding the question, but
It's going to depend on it is less about where your degree is from and more about whether or not you are qualified to work in the United States. For
good
us in
point.
particular, at the moment, there are a few, so I'm at a research institution, right? For us in particular, there are some considerations federally that we would have to take a closer look if you are from a few different countries. You can look up the countries of concern list if you want to see that. But most of it, I mean, most of what I have a number of colleagues who did some or most of their training outside of the United States. So it is not a barrier. It is whether you are eligible to work here.
Thank you. Yes. We have a question about the difference between tenure track and non-tenure track um, in terms of security. I think this was answered, unless the panelists want to add something else to in terms of security, in terms of tenure track and non-tenure track. Um, so anyway, if the person who asked this question wants more information, please take a look at the chat, and you very well may find email addresses of the panelists, and you can ask them more later. Um, Next question: wearing so many hats, do you feel you're still able to have a work-life balance? Do your off hours feel like hours? Like you come home after, and are you checking your emails after you get home and on the weekends? So,
Don't mind jumping on this one because I wear a lot of strange hats. And one of the things about access services work in particular is that the clock does not stop. I have this very silly saying that I've used for years is that there's no such thing as a library emergency, but there are emergencies in the library. And I will say, at least in access services work, where we're responsible for the building for 117 and a half hours per week, not that I'm counting, it does come home with me a lot. But the other side of that too is in other parts of my job, as the history department liaison, for instance, my work never comes home with me, and I never would look at email if that part of my job didn't require me to look at email. I am crazy dedicated to the idea of work-life balance. I really I hate to say this in a career pathway panel discussion, but I do not dream of labor. If I was the happiest I am is when I'm laying on a dock somewhere reading a book, not working. Not that I don't love being a librarian, not that I don't love my job, but work-life balance is vitally important to me. And being a librarian has made that so much easier, so much better. And being a faculty librarian in particular allows me to kind of have the ability to pick and choose when this is the most important thing in the world to me, and when this is something that I can take a bit of a breather from. I know it's different position by position. That's very much the history department liaison, Matt, saying that. The access services, Matt, is laughing at him right now at the fact that I may have to take a call at 11 o'clock at night if the building is on fire, for instance. So, you know, different hats.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Yeah.
I would add
Um,
that, I think that supervisors play a big role in work-life balance. And so when you're looking at positions, I think it's a really good thing to try to tease out what will be the expectations of this supervisor. Um, as Abigail was mentioning earlier, as far as when you're interviewing for a position, I think those are the kinds of questions that can be good to ask, maybe not in a large forum, but just like, how often are you taking work home? Do you feel like you're able to get everything done in a standard business, week? I think those are good questions to ask at that point, rather than getting into a position and realizing that things are maybe not in alignment with what you want.
And
right.
also, some of that ties into whether or not you're going into an academic scholarship role, right? If you're going to be doing research, a lot of my research cannot, I have, first of all, I have horrible work-life balance. First one to tell you that. But that comes with also a lot of flexibility, right? I have the flexibility to, I, later today, I'm going to jump on with two different research teams that I'm working with, and I'm going to go figure things out that we're doing with that. Am I going to spend all weekend in front of this machine doing qualitative coding? Yes, but it's for a research project with a friend of mine that I'm really excited about. So most of what I'm working on nights and weekends is going to be things that I am excited about, um, but the work, there's always more work than what fits in the day. And what you are interested and willing to pursue will absolutely change what opportunities you want to get into. So you have to kind of set those parameters and be realistic about what your level of engagement is going to lead to.
Well, thank you. And from my experience, I know kind of gauging what the culture of the place is and also your boss, you know, like on the weekends, do you think that your boss is kind of sending emails expecting an answer soon? So you might want to gauge things that way too. Um, so,
And you need to be honest with your boss too. You know, how much can you really do that to yourself? I
true.
am a working parent. I have two kids. I had a 3 and a 5-year-old during COVID. It was fantastic. I'm kidding. But I was very clear when I transitioned to the position here at Concordia that being a parent came first to me. I
Hmm.
do not have email on my phone, but all of my bosses have always had my cell phone. Ugh. So they can text. So you do have, I think luxury of setting those boundaries.
Hmm.
It's really, it's up to you.
Yeah, yeah. If your boss has your number. So, yeah, yeah. It's all matter of kind of balancing things out and working with your place and your boss on that. All right. This is for Liesl Cottrell. And it says, did you specifically go after a non-tenure track position? And what did, yeah. And can you speak to the decisions that made the experience you gathered to seek? I guess, let's see, I'm trying to,
I think I
you
understand.
stand this question? Okay.
I think so.
Okay.
So I've actually never I've only worked in two universities, and the library director position and the university librarian position was never a tenure offered position. I believe in the past, the director position here was tenure, but that was before my time. And honestly, I'm okay with it not being tenured because I feel like I have the luxury to pursue scholarship at my own pace. I also really have enjoyed being able to select special projects. Something I truly wanted to pursue was learning how to write grants. And in the past 4.5 years, I've received 5 grants. And yeah,
Wow.
some were for the library, some were collaborating with faculty and building OERs. And that's something I don't think I would have had the luxury to be able to do if I was a tenure track
Mhm.
position. That's just me personally, but I don't know what it's like to be a tenure track library director or library dean. So I can only speak from my experience. So
Well, thank you. And I do know there's non-tenure academic librarian positions where there's librarian one, two, three. They'll do that. I don't know. Do they do that at your school? No, they don't. Okay. Yes. Uh, okay. Next question. Are academic libraries a good place for workers who are disabled who may need accommodating specific point needs, such as remote work and flex time? And with my background in rehabilitation, I would hope so. And I think all your universities address that, do they not? For those with disabilities?
It will depend on the role. It will depend on the organization. I would not assume a universal positive approach to that.
Though,
I
don't.
think there's a lot of people who are doing a lot more towards that.
Uh,
But like I'm expected to be on campus 3 days a week. That is an expectation of my organization for the work that I do. So it would be questions I would want to try and get at early in the interview process.
Yes, and I would hope the universities, wherever students are applying, are adhering to the ADA. Um, I would hope, no matter
Legally,
where.
we're all committed to the ADA. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
but are they actually doing it, right?
But what that looks like in practice and
Hmm.
what is the like what does that actually look like? And are you asking for a formal accommodation or are you asking for something else? There's a lot of room between the bare minimum, which is, if you're in clinical medicine, that's the standard of care, the legal standard that we are required to meet, and the gold standard or the best kind of care and collaboration that you would hope would happen. And there's a lot of room between those two
Hmm.
bars.
Good point. It's probably a good idea to talk to the people there, find out more, especially during the interview itself, in terms of accessibility. Yeah, right. Do they just meet the bare minimum? So, yeah. But I'm glad because through the decades, it has become better. And for people with disabilities, accessibility. And so I hope this answers your question, but you're certainly welcome to reach out to the panelists if you have any more questions regarding that. And matter of fact, I'll leave my contact information in the chat too. And if hopefully I'll do it before I forget. If you have any questions about access. Um, okay, we have about 10 minutes. How huh, how much time? I'm not so sure. Oh, I think I understand. Okay. How much time is student facing in an academic library job? And I imagine it depends on the position. Does uh, does having a teaching certificate help or hinder um, in terms of, I guess, how much student time you'll have? But in general, how much time do you work directly with students?
I mean, I think like you said, it depends on the position, but for the kind of the traditional research librarian model that a lot of universities use, it's a lot of public facing or what I would say student facing work. As a research specialist, I spend a lot of my time either in research appointments, working, student to student, face to face. If you're teaching information literacy classes, one shots, you're spending a lot of time with students. I make myself stay up on the student lingo. I have no idea what they're saying to me all the time, but I try my damnedest to understand what they're saying. There's just a lot of time spent with students, which is great. I think it's the coolest part of our job, is that we get to teach in a way that I think other parts of academia don't always necessarily interact with students, surprisingly, for what are sometimes seen as support roles in the academy. But it really just depends on your job. And as in access services, all I do is talk to the public. So again, it's up to the position itself.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, depending on the your position, is it not? But I imagine you could create opportunities to meet with more students, could you not, at your library? You could do that. Um, let's see. What types of experiences would you be targeting when you're in graduate school to maximally prepare for a position after graduation, an academic library position? Any thoughts on that?
Take something uncomfortable.
Mm,
I see a lot of students take very, they've all taken the same thing, right? You
hmm
have your core courses, absolutely. But if there's something that you can take that is unusual or helpful, I kind of back alley ended up in there it was like, what else am I going to take? Into a database design course, and I still use that coursework every day. Like it was an unexpected one. So also, if you don't think you're a technology person, find a technology class and take that course. You're going to have to use it.
Yeah, I really like that answer. And I'd add to that, learn the nuts and bolts of librarianship. I think a lot of us get really interested in kind of the public facing side of things and the teaching and the interaction with patrons. But, on a lot of levels, a library still requires the baseline of cataloging, circulation, kind of how our profession works on a day-to-day basis. So don't skip those classes. Be able to say that you know what technical services is, that you know what a cataloging process looks like, that you can talk about what an ILS is. I see a lot of my colleagues who are really knowledgeable in their specific fields, but don't always remember that the baseline of a library is that we have these resources, and how do we plumb them? Well, the best way we plumb them is understanding the systems that underpin them.
mm, thank you indeed. Yes.
think those are really good
Yes,
answers. Oh, sorry. Those are
please
really
go
good
ahead.
answers. I would just add a couple of other things. I think that trying to maximize the number of internships you can do or the depth of those internships is really important. It's important to remember that, you're likely going to be applying against candidates that are not entry level that will have had a year or two of experience, like post MLS. And so to be competitive against those kind of candidates, it's really helpful to have as much experience as possible that you've generated through your MLS. I would also say that um, one advantage of having multiple internships is that it gives you multiple professional references that you can use. Because remember, most positions that you're applying for are going to require at least three references. While it's okay to have potentially non-academic library references, I think those often end up being the strongest because they have the strongest knowledge of how weird this search committee process, hiring processes in academic libraries. And then I also know more about the work that you've done. And then just as far as coursework, one thing I would add would be, I think project management is a really underappreciated skill in academic libraries. And I think that the ability to plan and execute projects and be able to talk about that in an interview context can really separate you from a lot of candidates who uh, maybe in their internships had more activities that they were doing. So they're on a desk, for example, or they created a LibGuide or something like that. But the ability to actually work on something that's takes a long time, that requires interaction with multiple people, that can be very impressive for a search committee, especially if there's a product or a result or an impact that you can discuss in the interview.
Thank you, indeed. Yes. And this relates somewhat to what was talked about before, but for those of you who had non-academic careers prior to librarianship, or even I'd say non-library positions, how did you leverage that experience during your transition into libraries? Or did you start from the entry level at your new path?
There was a really interesting experience I had right out of undergrad.
Hmm.
I that experience being a debt collector has really helped me communicating with students and faculty who get really upset about fees or lost items. So that's just probably the weirdest job I think I've ever had that I use all the time. And the fact that I had to memorize a script and understand how to navigate that uncomfortable situation.
Interesting. I'm sure you were a very nice debt collector, I would guess, I would hope.
I was really good at it, which was really weird, and I got out very quickly.
Okay. Yes, yes. Those non-academic libraries jobs can really, if you think about the position long enough, it could perhaps translate, basic skills you may have to bring in to the academic library position. And all right, thank you. Any advice for low-income students trying to move to where the jobs are? Any advice for low-income students who are trying to move to where the jobs are?
I mean, I think
Um,
this goes for both low-income students, wherever you're coming out of your graduate program, however you're coming out of your graduate program, is take the jobs that fit what you do and that are available. The long and short of it is getting a job and getting your foot in the door in academia is difficult, and you will apply a million times. I'm sure all of you are already applying a million times. And when you have something that fits what you want to be doing in a place that may or may not be your first choice, sometimes a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush, for the simple fact that academia is, as everybody is deeply aware, is going through a tough financial and political climate, and sometimes the job that is right in front of you is the best way to jump at things, get the experience.
yes, yes. And if you do get a job and it's across the country and far, there may be a good chance they'll offer you moving expenses for that, or you can ask about it itself. Um,
One quick thing I would add to that as well is in the state of Nevada, and I don't think this is as unusual as it used to be, we reimburse job candidates, which, I mean, if you're flying from the East Coast out here and then you're staying in hotels, I mean, it can be a lot of money. And so that's something to try to figure out early on in the process before you waste your time. If that's out of your budget, because let's say you're buying your flights, say 3 weeks before the interview, then you're not getting reimbursed for a month to 6 weeks. So that's 9 weeks maybe that you're out of pocket, whatever you ended up spending. And you may not have even got the position at that point too. So just something to keep in mind.
yeah, indeed. Yes, important information. Have any of you participated in an internship? If so, any tips on applying for them? Um, I do know in our program, you talked to our internship placement person, but how about you folks? What kind of internships were you in, or practicums?
I went through my library school. I didn't do it blindly. I didn't cold call. I didn't email. I just went straight to the people who had the connections at UIUC.
All right, thank you. And I'm sure you'll get a maybe if you have a student organization where you are, you might ask the members about their practicums and internships and what they recommend too. So, okay, this is for Nate. Nathaniel King. You mentioned that you had 2 years experience post MLIS is good. once I get my MLIS degree, uh, as my pre-degree experience made less useful in the piece of my resume. Oh, in other words, okay, so you have your pre-degree experience, and will that not help even though I don't have the 2 years experience after my MLIS degree?
Yeah, what I think I was referring to was if you're an entry-level candidate, no professional experience, and you're applying for jobs that are eligible for entry-level candidates, you may still be competing with people who have a few years of experience. Once you're in that position where you have a few years of experience, I think it's up to you whether you include pre MLS experience on there. In some cases, I think it could be useful. In other cases, the most valuable experience for an employee is going to be that post MLS experience. And some people start to take that off at that point. But again, it just depends on the position, you, and you know, for example, a case where I would leave it on there. Let's say, for example, you wanted to be an archivist, you had archival internships, and then you ended up in an instruction position, and you're applying, and then you're now applying for archivist positions. That would be a case where you would probably want to leave it on there, for example.
Dee, thank you so much. And looks like at one, we're actually, I think we're a minute past one. I apologize. Uh, it was wonderful. I'm sorry. I we couldn't get to all your questions, but if there's an email in the chat, you may be able to get your answer from one of our panelists. And I will try not to forget to put my email in the chat. Uh, itself. Thank you so much. That was great. Round of applause for all of you. And um, please, if you can, all of you, our attendees, we do have our Pathway panel for public librarians on February 19th, same time, noon. And we have on February 20th our alternative careers panel, noon central. So if you can make that, that'd be great. And anyway, many, many thanks for all of you, for the panelists, for taking the time. I've learned things. Thank you so much. A lot of things. Thank you. And with that, have a great rest of the day.